Hey folks, this is Kelani. With all the back and forth recently about Azerite Armor, a lot of the player base seems quite frustrated with how Blizzard has responded to the concerns about Azerite Armor overall and the various problems that have been outlined, not just by the community but by Blizzard themselves as well. We've had a few discussions in a Reddit AMA and one or two Q&As, but we didn't really come away with anything solid. The Emissary change went live to allow Azerite Armor rewards to scale up to 370 item level, but there was still something missing. There's still no way of targeting specific Azerite armor pieces and therefore Azerite traits, and Mythic Plus doesn't really allow you to actively work towards Azerite at all. The only chance you have is from the weekly Mythic Plus cache. Blizzard realized this was an issue, but didn't yet have an answer for us. Until now. It looks like they may have finally come up with their last piece of the puzzle here. Let's hope it fits in nice and snugly so there's no gaps remaining. Their answer is an Azerite Armor Vendor. You heard me right, they're bringing vendors back into the game. Well, at least for this one system, for now. It's weird that they would remove vendors for general PvE and for PvP, but find an answer to our problems in a vendor for the Azerite Armor system. Bit odd, that, but let's focus on this little nugget of information. The vendor will actually be our good old friend Thaumaturge Vashreen. It looks like he's not collecting Veiled Argonite anymore, and he's somehow managed to get his hands on all manner of Azerite armor to sell. You'll be able to purchase a few different things from him after patch 8.1 goes live. All of his Azerite armor is tied to the dungeon loot tables as well, so you won't be able to get any raid gear that we know of, but the rest is up for grabs. You can buy random tokens, which turn into random pieces of Azerite armor from the dungeon loot tables at item levels 355, 370 and 385. The higher the item level, the more it's going to cost you. So you can treat this exactly like the weekly Mythic Plus reward by buying up various random tokens and hoping for the best. But there's actually going to be specific Azerite armor pieces available as well. That means you will in fact have a way to target any piece of Azerite gear that comes from any of the Battle for Azeroth dungeons after patch 8.1 releases, providing the dev team doesn't change course on this particular choice. Those specific armor pieces might only be available at item level 385 though, and they're going to cost significantly more than the random tokens, as you might expect. So you can buy the random ones as you're gearing up and focus on the specific ones when you get to the point where you don't really need the gear, but it would be a really nice side grade to have the traits that you want. Don't worry about this vendor getting left behind in patch 8.1 either. Whenever the next raid tier and the next Mythic Plus season are released with the higher item level rewards, the vendor will also be updated to match the new item level maximums and offer higher item level Azerite armor. So hopefully this should be our long-term fix to the Azerite armor problems. But what are we going to be using to purchase these Azerite armor pieces or tokens? Gold? War resources? No, don't be silly. There's going to be a new currency introduced which doesn't have a name yet, so I would expect yet another essence to pop up in our currency tab. Even though we don't know the name of the currency, we have a pretty good idea of where Blizzard wants this currency to actually come from. The first source, and it seems like probably the largest source, is going to be your weekly Mythic Plus cache. No surprises there, but to add on to that, your weekly cache will no longer be able to reward Azerite armor, so instead of the small chance of getting a random piece of Azerite armor, you'll instead be guaranteed to get a good chunk of this new currency. The higher your best Mythic Plus key in the previous week, the more of this currency you're going to get. Apparently it's going to scale exponentially too. The example given was completing a plus 10 key would reward you with about 3 times as much currency as completing a plus 7 key. That's pretty huge and definitely increases the pressure to try and pump out those higher keys. I'm really curious to see if this reward will cap out at plus 10 like the item level rewards do, or whether it will continue past plus 10 to reward anyone pushing those really high keys. That's going to be interesting to see which way they go with that decision, but the bottom line still comes back to the higher key you do, the faster you can buy your Azerite armor. I think this is a pretty decent solution and a fairly good middle ground too. If Azerite armor was thrown into the Mythic Plus loot table, you would have to run dungeon after dungeon after dungeon to even get a chance at the Azerite piece you're hunting for. With this vendor, you just have to get one high key done each week, gather up all of this new currency, and then buy out the exact piece that you want. I'm kind of surprised that the devs are actually giving us free reign over that choice instead of locking us to just random tokens, but I'm very happy we can pick and choose, even if it costs a bit more to do so. So that's probably where most of our new currency will come from, but there is one more source. Scrapping. They had to do something here. I haven't been to the scrapper in way too long. Don't blame me, okay? It's like down 13 flights of stairs, and who wants to climb them all again? That's one of the main reasons I'm playing mage. No joke, I can teleport back up to the top easy peasy. But scrapping Azerite Armor specifically will also yield this new currency. Right now it's limited to just epic items, so item level 340 and above, and the higher the item level that you throw into the scrapper, the more currency you'll get for it. That means any Azerite Armor you come across that you won't be using for whatever reason can actually help you on your way to a piece that you want or need. That's a pretty awesome addition, but the enchanters haven't been forgotten about either. Apparently disenchanting the same items will also yield this new currency, so you don't need to worry about disenchanting or scrapping. You can just go ahead and get your shards while getting this new currency. Let's have a quick look at where you can get spare pieces of Azerite Armor to fuel this little rampage. The first one is obviously raiding. If you're raiding right now, there's a half decent chance you've gotten a piece or two of Azerite gear from Uldir. If those pieces drop again after 8.1, you can just lob them in the scrapper and say hello to some fancy Azerite coins, or whatever name they actually come up with. That's pretty cool, but I do see a bit of a problem there. Right now, several players in my guild are starting to get duplicate Azerite Armor in Mythic Uldir. That's a pretty huge upgrade for anyone who hasn't been lucky enough to get one yet, but after 8.1, that's also going to be very useful for the player who just looted it, even if it's a duplicate item. The outcome here will depend on the player and what they value, or maybe whatever rules your guild has in place, but right now that item could be a shard or maybe just an off-spec piece of gear. So it's not that big of a deal to pass it over to someone else, but after 8.1 it's a whole lot more useful to keep a hold of. Either way, duplicate gear from raids will have more value, and so will running multiple difficulties each week. I love that the amount of currency increases as the item level of the piece you're scrapping goes up, because that should hopefully deter people a little bit from wanting to clear through heroic and normal just for a chance at some extra Azerite coins, but I wouldn't be surprised if players still end up doing it. The next decent source of Azerite Armor is Emissary quests, thanks to the recent change to allow them to scale with your item level. So every time those quests come around, you can nab yourself a 355 or 370 piece of Azerite gear, which you can either equip if it's an upgrade or chuck into the scrapper if it's not. That's going to vastly increase the value of those Emissary quests, because no matter what the outcome, you're working towards another Azerite piece. If it's an upgrade, sweet, get that sucker equipped. If it's not, well, at least it's worth a few Azerite coins, so you're still working towards that super special item with every single best Azerite trait you can think of. That's a win-win in my book. And then the last source might not be worth talking about for some people, but seeing as 340 item level Azerite Armor will still get you a handful of Azerite coins, Mythic Zeros might become a little more valuable. The loot isn't guaranteed, and 340 item level Azerite gear will be worth the very least amount of currency compared to pretty much anything else, but every little helps, right? We'll have to wait and see what the exact values end up looking like to decide whether or not it's really worth drudging through all of the dungeons on Mythic Zero difficulty just for a little extra boost there, but it definitely could be for some chaps. Just think, if you end up being 1 or 2 Azerite coins short of buying your dream piece of Azerite Armor, but there's no Emissary quest and you've already cleared all of the raids, where do we go from here? What else is there left to do? Mythic Zero. It could either really encourage us to go back and clear out Mythic Zeros again, or just be a last-ditch effort to finish up your next purchase. Either way, we could see more groups running a good old world tour just like back in Legion. Now, before you start scrambling over to the item restoration tool and undeleting all of your Azerite Armor, take a deep breath. Only Azerite gear that drops after patch 8.1 goes live will yield this new currency when thrown into the scrapper. That's the official message anyways, and personally, I don't know if I'm going to trust it this time around. We were told plenty of times when a new patch was rolling around in Legion that old Emissary caches won't be able to reward the new legendaries for the new patch, and then the patch hits and plenty of players who stockpiled their caches got some new legendaries. I think this happened twice, so while it may be the intent for only new Azerite Armor pieces to disenchant or scrap into this new currency, I'm going to hold on to all of my spare 385 pieces, assuming I ever get any spare 385 pieces at the very least. I wonder how item restoration will treat Azerite Armor 2. Will the items count as being looted after the patch if you restore them after the patch? I don't really want to think about it too much because that seems to be bordering on exploiting territory, but maybe something the dev team should think about. Hopefully it all works out as planned, because stockpiling Azerite armor from here to 8.1 would be really annoying. I'm pretty happy with this solution in theory. It seems to tick most of the boxes at the very least. We gain something meaningful from running Mythic Plus, and it gives us a real chance to work towards the Azerite items we actually want. The higher end Mythic Plus chaps will be able to really optimize their setup and finally get a chance to play around with the various trait builds. Duplicate Azerite armor pieces have more value, the Emissary quest with Azerite armor have more value, and we don't have to play the lottery in our weekly Mythic Plus cache for Azerite anymore. It looks like this vendor should put us in a pretty good spot, and I'm glad the dev team didn't shy away from the idea of a vendor, just because we've been asking for vendors to return for various other forms of content. I still think they should do something a little more exciting with island expeditions, and a new vendor to spend your doubloons at could be the answer. I don't know if a vendor would really make a difference in Warfronts, but it would certainly be welcome in PvP. As a quick note, the blue post did mention that the team were aware of PvPers wanting more options and choice too, but that's a separate discussion. Hopefully that one also ends in a vendor being implemented, because it really is a simple fix which works so well. So when 8.1 rolls around, we should have a pretty clear set of objectives which allow us to work towards higher item level Azerite armor, and even specific pieces of high item level Azerite armor. It's going to be fun having a goal to work towards once again. What do you think of the introduction of an Azerite armor vendor from what we know so far? What do you think the new currency will be called? Leave all your thoughts in the comments section below. A big thank you to all of our supporters over on Patreon. You can see their names floating by on screen. If you want to join these lovely guys and gals, you can find a link in the description below. Remember to leave a like just below the video before you leave, and if you want to see more, make sure to subscribe. But apart from that, thanks for watching folks, good luck and have fun, and as always I will see you next time.